So this is David Gamberg, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm here with Thomas Tuck O'Brien for the interview. So Tuck, where did the name Tuck come from?
Tuck came from when I was a youngster. I guess I liked the nursery rhyme, Tommy Tucker sang for supper, and they tagged me with that. So I suppose
So it started right from the get-go.
right from the get-go.
Okay, so now tell me this, Tuck. How young are you?
I'll be 88 in October, so
Fantastic.
I'm on the way, 87 plus.
87 plus on the way to 88. All right, so now let's go back in time and tell us, what was your first job?
My first job was basically playing professional baseball, I guess.
Is that right? How did that come about?
Well, that all started when I was lucky enough to win a tryout camp with the New York Yankees way back in 1948. My uncle, who was a priest up in Mansfield, Massachusetts, called my dad, and he said the Yankees are having a tryout camp, and maybe Tuck would like to come up to it. And I played a lot of sandlot ball in Queens and what have you, and so I was eager to go, and I went up there. It was a 3-day camp. I had 3 great days. Lefty Gomez, a great Yankee pitcher, was the Yankee scout in charge.
Right.
And as I say, I had 3 great days. I ended up winning the MVP, and from there it all started. Progressed through high school and into college, and then played summer college ball up in Vermont, New Hampshire, and up along the Canadian border. And in the spring and summer of '49, I would work out at the stadium maybe 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
And then also played a lot of sandlot ball in Queens on the weekends.
That must have been exciting.
It was, and it was
Yankee Stadium, right?
Yeah.
You don't get much bigger than that.
No, it was and probably one of the biggest thrills. At least it was for me, too, but I think it was for my father. In one of the last ball games that we were playing, an inter-squad game at Yankee Stadium.
Right.
And my dad happened to, it was a Saturday, my dad happened to come up with me, and that was the only time he watched me at the stadium.
Right.
And I hit one home run into the right field stands.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that's great.
It was a big thrill, yeah.
So this was your first line of work. You were in the service, Korean War, and you started professional baseball, playing professional baseball. How'd you get into teaching?
I did finally graduate after 7 years because of the service and playing professional baseball. I was playing in Wichita Falls, Texas, in the big state league, and the ball club allowed me to go home for the birth of Dave. And instead of going back to Texas, I ended up going up to Erie, Pennsylvania, and I finished the season in Pennsylvania, but I already was 26 or so, 25.
Right.
And so I decided to start looking for a teaching job. And
okay, so you transitioned from playing ball to teaching, and where did you start your teaching career?
I started in Riverhead.
Oh, out here on Long Island.
Right.
So you grew up in Queens.
Right.
Right, you went to school in Connecticut.
Correct.
You ended up doing a little bit of the professional baseball, going to college, then you end up in Riverhead as a teacher.
Right.
And somehow or another you get to Southold.
Because I was a Korean vet, they gave me $1,000 more in Riverhead than they would have in Connecticut, although I love Connecticut.
Sure.
And there was no Long Island Expressway or nothing, so it was all country road all the way out here.
Wow.
And Riverhead was a possibility because they had a semi-pro team playing a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe I can continue playing a little bit on the side just to keep, in tune.
Yep.
But when I was out here, it was gone. And then I ran into Dick Osmer, who was the athletic director here in Southold.
Now this is still late 50s?
This is 1959.
Okay.
All right. In the spring of '59, and he told me there was a teaching job and a baseball job open in Southold.
Right.
So I came, I got interviewed, and I got accepted, and I've been here ever since.
So now there's a great story that I know of. You had told me this before, so I think the viewers would love to hear about this. So you're going to graduate school with a couple of fellas. You're driving into the city to go to NYU. Is this correct?
Yes, correct.
For your master's degree.
Right.
Okay. So now we're probably in the 1960s. So there was this one particular Saturday that you're going into the city. What happens?
Well, there were four of us that used to carpool going back and forth.
Right.
And my class was canceled. And so I had to wait around like 2 hours. So I'm walking around the halls and I saw an advertisement for teacher exchanges in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I said, you know, I always had the wanderlust. So I looked into it and I sent my application there. And every year I also told, and by that time I had come to South Hall.
Right.
And Mr. Williams was the superintendent.
Okay.
And each year he kept updating it with a letter to Hawaii.
So you didn't get an answer back right away?
Didn't get an answer back, not only right away, but 6 or 7 years later.
6 or 7 years. But
I get a notice from Hawaii from a fellow by the name of Mr. Kawasaki.
Right.
He was from Hilo on the Big Island. And he was very interested, and a lot of the Japanese Americans that teach in Hawaii love to get off the rock, as they say.
Okay.
They want to get into the States. They want to look at New York, Washington, Boston,
Sure.
big cities.
That's right.
And I had to convince him that coming to East End of Long Island was a very good thing because they could get to Boston.
That's right.
They could get to New York. It wasn't too long to get to Washington.
Very true.
And Mr. Kawasaki was willing to do it.
So he exchanged with you?
No,
No?
I had a choice because they have an estate system.
Okay.
And I decided that I would rather go to Oahu, where Honolulu is, because it's a little bit bigger.
Right.
He was from Hilo on the Big Island. And so I definitely jumped. And as I said, they had a state system, so it worked out great. I taught basically 6th grade through the first 10 years.
Right.
And then I got involved when I came back with the elementary science study.
Okay.
Keith Haji was the science teacher, and at that
Right.
time, the Soviets had beaten us to outer space, and they were putting a big push for elementary science.
Elementary science. Okay, right. That makes sense. So you were part of that big push here in South
Right,
Hall,
right. I was
on
part
the
of that
local
big
level.
push.
That's right. That's right.
One of the nicest jobs I ever had was back in 1972, when the fellow that signed me for the Detroit Tiger organization, Mr. Jacobson, who I had contact with throughout the years, called me and asked me if I wanted to work with his son Bobby with the Kansas City Royals Academy concept. And that idea was after the June 1st draft, which is going on right now as we speak.
As we
They're
speak,
they're
yes.
drafting kids from colleges and high schools and from all over
Even
the place.
in 2019,
right,
we're still doing
right,
that same
right,
calendar.
Right,
Yeah.
So this is after the draft.
Right.
And this is like looking for the needle in the haystack, the ones that the big major league clubs may have missed for some
Right,
reason.
Right.
So the Kansas City Royal organization had numerous tryout groups, and we were one of them and we looked at New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania for 6 weeks. There were 3 of us in the group, and we looked at maybe 2,500 kids.
So your job was one of a handful of people to look for that needle in the haystack.
Right, right.
Wow.
And the idea was, if we saw youngsters, and we saw a lot of good youngsters, no question.
I'm sure.
And what they would do is, the youngster would sign an agreement and they would go. The Kansas City would send them to their spring training facility in Florida.
Right.
That would be in September of that year.
Okay.
Baseball season basically was over for
Oh, sure. Towards the end
for
of the
most.
year. Right.
So these youngsters would go to the camp. They would work out in the morning.
Right.
And then they eventually would go to junior college in the afternoon, and then after maybe 3 months and before regular spring training started, they would either be selected to have a contract with the Kansas City Royal organization, or they would say thank you for coming, and at least they have an education. They got paid for what they were doing. So
that was a fun job.
that was a fun job.
Besides, of course, teaching 6th grade at
Right,
South Hall
right,
Elementary School.
exactly.
So just let's take a moment and tell us, what do you think is most important for young children to know and to learn to become successful?
Well, I think youngsters have to sort of have a good feeling about themselves. You know,
Sure.
I think success is very important, and there's always bumps in the road.
Correct.
And if they can look at the bright side of everything,
Right.
the good days when they had good days and the bad days, we're all going to have bad days.
Sure.
even big baseball players have bad days.
Very true. Very true.
So I believe that youngsters can, I can encourage youngsters to believe in themselves
Right.
and to ride out the bumpy roads.
Sure.
I think that they'll be successful. Well, success is being happy with what you're doing.
Sure.
It's being successful in making a living and having a family, if that be it the case.
Right. Sure.
Being a productive member of your community.
Absolutely.
Being a fine citizen.
That's right.
And
Wise words, Tuck. Yeah. No, it's very important. You know, I don't think any of us should take it for granted. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this interview with you was I knew early on that you have lived a life that is very varied. You've traveled, you've accomplished a lot, you've set about a life with the goals that you just define your success: family, citizenship, service, and you've been a valuable member of the Southold community. And so one other thing, of course, I mean, you haven't listed all of your jobs and employment, but we do know that you're a bus driver here at Southold, and I'm sure some of the viewers actually have ridden the bus with Tuck, right?
Yep, I'm sure they have.
Right? So how about that? Did you enjoy that?
I did. I really
Yeah.
did. I found the kids to be very communicative.
Sure.
They were wonderful. Of course, I forgot the names of a lot of them.
That's okay. That's okay.
But
Yeah.
and even up until the last day, the kids were really, really great. I
They
really
are
enjoyed
great kids
it.
out here. We're very lucky.
Yeah, we're very fortunate.
And let me tell you, the kids are very fortunate, very lucky to have had you, whether as a teacher, a bus driver, or as a member of the Southold community. Tuck, I want to thank you very much
Well,
for the
thank you so
interview.
much. It was
Thank
great.
you for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
All righty.
And God bless
Yep.
Southold.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Tuck. All righty.